I didn't think of myself as selfless. I thought of myself as necessary. There was always someone who needed help. Someone who was struggling more than me. Someone whose crisis felt more urgent than my quiet discomfort. I learned early that being the strong one made life simpler. People relied on you, trusted you, stopped asking questions. So I became that person. The one who shows up. The one who listens. The one who fixes things. At first, it felt meaningful. Purposeful. Almost honorable. I told myself I was building something important, a life defined by usefulness, reliability, being there when it mattered. I didn't realize how easily usefulness replaces identity. I remember the first time I felt it, the imbalance. Someone was thanking me for helping them through something heavy, something painful, something that had nothing to do with me. I smiled, said the right things, accepted their gratitude. And then I went home and felt empty. Not tired. Empty. I told myself it was normal. Emotional labor takes energy. Compassion has a cost. I was just drained. That explanation worked, for a while. So I kept going. Whenever something in my own life felt uncomfortable, I redirected my attention outward. Helping others gave me relief from my own unanswered questions. As long as I was needed somewhere else, I didn't have to ask myself what I needed. That became my coping mechanism. I didn't ignore my problems. I postponed them by prioritizing everyone else's. People started coming to me automatically. Advice. Support. Presence. I rarely said no, not because I was afraid, but because saying yes made me feel valuable. Needed people don't feel lost. Or so I thought. Over time, my days filled with other people's lives. Their emergencies. Their emotions. Their decisions. I became deeply involved in everything, except myself. I stopped noticing how rarely I talked about my own fears. How quickly I dismissed my own exhaustion. How I framed my life as fine, simply because it wasn't falling apart. Nothing forced me to stop. That's the dangerous part. A life built around helping others can run forever without asking whether you're alive inside it. I noticed how often I said things like, "I'll deal with it later," or, "It's not that important," when it came to my own feelings. I meant it at the time. Other people's pain always felt more real than mine. But mine didn't go away. It just waited. I remember one night, sitting alone, replaying the day in my head, all the conversations, all the support I had given, all the problems I had helped solve. On paper, it was a good day. Inside, I felt nothing. That scared me. Because emptiness isn't loud. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't interrupt your routine. It just grows quietly while you stay busy. I began to realize something uncomfortable. Helping others had become a way to avoid my own life. As long as I was indispensable somewhere else, I didn't have to confront the parts of me that felt unfinished, uncertain, or afraid. I wasn't saving people out of pure generosity. I was hiding. Hiding from questions I didn't know how to answer. Hiding from choices I didn't want to make. Hiding from the realization that my own life felt strangely untouched. The moment of clarity didn't come during a crisis. It came during silence. A rare evening when no one called. No one needed anything. No problem required my attention. I sat there, waiting for the next interruption, and none came. That's when it hit me, if no one needed me right now, who was I supposed to be? I didn't know. And that terrified me more than being overwhelmed ever had. Because it meant I had built my entire sense of worth around being useful, not around being alive. I had been saving everyone else so efficiently that I hadn't noticed something essential: no one was saving me. And I didn't know how to start. The realization didn't make me stop. It made me function better. That's what scares me the most when I look back. I knew something was wrong, and instead of changing, I optimized. I became more efficient at being needed. I managed my energy better, scheduled my availability, learned how to listen without breaking down. From the outside, it looked like growth. Inside, it was survival. I told myself that everyone feels tired sometimes. That adulthood is about responsibility, not fulfillment. That meaning comes from sacrifice. I had all the right explanations, and they were convincing enough to keep me moving. So I stayed. I stayed when I was exhausted. I stayed when I felt invisible in my own life. I stayed because leaving felt selfish, dramatic, unnecessary. And because staying felt normal. There's a quiet danger in lives that don't fall apart. When nothing is actively burning, you don't feel justified in escaping. You tell yourself it would be irresponsible to complain. Ungrateful to want more. I learned how to minimize myself politely. When someone asked how I was, I answered automatically, fine. Busy, but fine. That sentence became a shield. It closed conversations before they could reach anything real. Over time, I stopped expecting anyone to ask deeper questions. I had trained them not to. The breaking point wasn't a collapse. It was numbness. I noticed it in small ways. Music I used to love sounded flat. Achievements felt procedural. Even rest felt like another task to complete efficiently so I could return to being useful. I wasn't sad. I was hollow. That's when resentment started creeping in, quiet, ashamed resentment. Not toward the people I helped, but toward the role I had accepted without ever negotiating its cost. I caught myself thinking things I didn't like. Why does everyone get to fall apart except me? Why is my pain always optional? Why do I feel guilty for wanting something that doesn't serve anyone else? Those thoughts scared me, so I buried them under more responsibility. But buried things don't disappear. They wait. I began to see how conditional my worth had become. When I was helpful, I felt visible. When I wasn't, I felt irrelevant. That realization hurt because it meant I had participated in my own erasure. I had taught people how to treat me. I had taught myself that my needs were negotiable, secondary, flexible, while everyone else's were urgent and fixed. That's not generosity. That's self-abandonment with good manners. The moral dilemma became unavoidable then. Do you continue being the person everyone relies on, even if it costs you your inner life, because at least you know who you are in that role? Or do you risk disappointing people, losing connection, and facing yourself without the armor of usefulness? Choosing others felt noble. Choosing myself felt terrifying. Because I didn't know who I was without being needed. I imagined stepping back, saying no, being less available, prioritizing something that had nothing to do with helping anyone. The image filled me with anxiety. Who would I be then? What would justify my place in the world? That question haunted me. I realized I didn't know how to exist without earning my worth daily. I didn't know how to rest without guilt. I didn't know how to want something just because I wanted it. And that ignorance wasn't accidental. It was learned. Slowly. Repeatedly. Over years of choosing the role that made me acceptable over the life that made me real. The truth was painful but clear. I wasn't staying because others needed me. I was staying because I didn't know how to leave without losing myself, because I had never learned who I was beyond service. That night, sitting alone with that thought, I understood something that changed everything. If I keep living this way, nothing dramatic will happen. No collapse. No explosion. Just a quiet, complete disappearance, lived out in other people's emergencies. And no one would ever call it tragedy. They would call it reliability. I thought choosing myself would feel like relief. It didn't. It felt like guilt. Heavy, suffocating guilt, the kind that doesn't accuse you of doing something wrong, but of being wrong. The kind that whispers that you're abandoning people, responsibilities, even a version of yourself that everyone else seems to value. I didn't wake up one day and decide to stop saving everyone. I hesitated. For a long time. Because when you've built your entire identity around being needed, stepping back feels like erasing yourself. If you're no longer the reliable one, the strong one, the fixer, what's left? I found out slowly. It started with one small refusal. One moment where I didn't answer immediately. Didn't fix the problem. Didn't offer solutions. I just stayed silent. My body reacted as if I'd done something dangerous. Tight chest. Racing thoughts. The instinct to explain myself, to apologize, to rush back into usefulness. I didn't. And something unexpected happened. Nothing collapsed. The world didn't end. People adapted. Some found other support. Some waited. A few were disappointed. But the catastrophe I had imagined, the one where everything depended on me, never arrived. That was the first crack in the illusion. I wasn't essential. I was convenient. That realization hurt more than I expected. Because it meant my sacrifice hadn't been as noble as I thought. Some of it had been fear of being irrelevant, fear of being alone with myself, fear of discovering that without constant giving, I didn't know who I was. As I pulled back, the silence became louder. Without emergencies to manage, I had to face the emptiness I had been avoiding. There was no one else's pain to focus on, no urgent problem to justify my exhaustion. Just me. And a life that felt strangely underdeveloped. I didn't suddenly discover passions or clarity. What I found first was grief. Grief for the years I had spent being functional instead of present. Grief for how thoroughly I had postponed my own becoming. I understood then that no one had forced me into this role. I had chosen it, again and again, because it made me safe. Safe from rejection. Safe from failure. Safe from asking myself uncomfortable questions. Being needed had protected me from having to decide what I wanted. Stepping away didn't make me happier right away. It made me honest. I started noticing how often I felt the urge to justify my existence. How deeply the belief ran that rest had to be earned, that desire had to be useful, that my worth depended on output. Unlearning that was painful. I disappointed people. Some relationships changed. A few faded. Others revealed something uncomfortable. They only worked when I was constantly available, endlessly giving, quietly disappearing. Letting those go felt like betrayal. But staying would have been worse. I learned that you can love people deeply and still refuse to disappear for them. That responsibility without boundaries isn't virtue, it's self-erasure disguised as kindness. Slowly, my life began to take a different shape. Not dramatic. Not glamorous. Just quieter. I had time to feel things without immediately fixing them. Space to want something without explaining how it benefited anyone else. Permission to rest without preparing an excuse. For the first time, my life wasn't organized around emergencies. It was organized around presence. And presence changed everything. I still help people. But I don't use helping to avoid myself anymore. I still care. But I don't trade my inner life for approval. If you're listening to this and you recognize yourself, the one who's always there, always strong, always holding things together, I want to tell you something gently, without judgment. Being needed is not the same as being known. And a life spent only supporting others can look meaningful while slowly hollowing you out. No one came to save me from that. I had to stop volunteering for my own disappearance. I was busy saving everyone else. And in doing so, I almost lost the only person whose life I was actually responsible for. My own. Choosing myself didn't make me selfish. It made me real. And even now, with guilt that hasn't fully faded, with regret for time I can't reclaim, with uncertainty that still scares me, I know this: I am no longer invisible in my own life. I'm not waiting to be needed to feel worthy. I'm here. And this time, I'm not saving myself for later.